Is there any obligation on the part of employers in Ontario as it relates to training and the upgrading of skills? There's no legislative mandate for employers, is there?
No, and I'm so glad you asked that question, because in Canada, we actually employers offer less training monies to their employees than in the United States and in most parts of the Western world. We can do a much better job in Canada of offering training monies to employees. And in fact, the research shows that when you do that, when an employer does that, there's much less chance of their employees feeling unhappy or underemployed. And when you have a happy employee, a fulfilled employee, they're more productive, and that productivity adds to the economy.
In my research on this particular aspect in the United States, employers roughly spend between 2.5 and 3% of revenues as it relates to their training budget. In Canada, we are 1 to 1.8%. But I think in the province of Quebec, it's a little bit different. I think there is some statutory obligations on employers that they need to have a portion of revenue earmarked for training and upgrading.
I think that's a great idea. We have talked to businesses about that in our consultations on this topic. I did that before I received this position when I was a visiting researcher. And their concern is that they would spend money on employees and the employees would leave and go somewhere else. And my response to them is, but you will be then getting another employee that's well trained from another employer. In other words, we have to change our attitudes. We have to do a paradigm shift about that as employers. And there are so many good Northern European models that do just that, that training is seen as a responsibility of the employer, much more than in Canada.
But the training that Ryerson provides in terms of continuing education, is it earmarked for improving the skills of the employee for employment purposes, or is the training just interest training?
Mm-hmm. We have both. We have certificates.
But is it leaning more to one or the other?
It's definitely leaning more towards skills in the workplace. We work with employers, and we have many contracts, many good partnerships with employers where they have surveyed, and we often help them survey the needs of their employees and of themselves, of the employer. And we develop together, we have a committee, an academic committee that also have representatives from the employer and from the university, and we develop the curriculum together and offer workshops or certificates to those employers. The project management certificate is a great example. It's a certificate, 8 courses.
8 courses.
8 courses, accredited by PMI, which means you have an accreditation that you're a project manager when you finish. Not all institutions have that accreditation. And then we often tailor it to different industries. Engineers, for example, non-engineers, foreign-trained engineers, etc.
Tell us about trust. How does the good dean, how do you develop trust amongst the people that you work with? Trust with potential employers? Because I would think that would be a fairly important ingredient for anybody who's looking at the Chang School, either as a student, but more importantly as an employer. If I'm going to sign a contract and you're going to train 150 people from my particular firm, I would want to know.
I'm very direct, and I often preface this when I meet new people, new colleagues, new clients. I will tell them what I think. My opinion will be transparent. I would say the majority of people appreciate that. There's a small minority that doesn't. And when you analyze why they don't, it's often they don't like what, they don't agree. They have a different opinion, and they see that, my transparency probably means I'm going to stick to my guns. I'll give you an example. I was really young when I was chief psychologist, one of the youngest. I think I was the youngest in the province. So I think I was probably a little more direct than I should have been. But on my first day on the job, I said to my psychologist, if you, and this was during the times of cutbacks, I said, if you go there and you advocate for that child, do what you have to do to advocate for those students. I have your back. You don't worry about your jobs. if this is going to be a 9-to-5 job and you're going to go home and you're going to forget about the needs of your clients, then you're looking at your worst enemy. Now, I have become much better at communicating, a little softer since then. But I've always been direct. Again, that does not suit everyone, but then you don't have to partner with everyone. They deserve to know what I think, and I deserve to know if they can work with me or not. And I hear from colleagues in every position I have felt, well, we always know where she stands. And so I think that's, and I actually really appreciate people that are the same. Then I know that if they have a disagreement with me, they'll tell me. They won't do it behind closed doors. They won't be obstructive in the workplace. And I find that, again, for the great majority of my relationships, that has worked very well. And David, I don't think I can change if I wanted to, so that's my style.
I'm sure you can change if you wanted to. But tell us about the opposite effect. That's your style of being transparent, being open, being direct and candid. It's helped to establish your reputation going forward. But how do you deal with those individuals that are not trustworthy or give you signs that they're not trustworthy, who you like to take into your confidence, but how do you deal with those?
Well, often I start by dealing with them directly, saying, here are the issues, we disagree on these issues, here that we disagree on these issues, let's talk about it. That doesn't often work. I mean, if they're going to disagree from the beginning, then there is an issue. I have found over the years and over all the privilege of all my careers, the team takes care of difficult people. They will be dealt with by the others in the institution, in the team. Because if someone else is obstructing the work of the team, it affects everybody, not just the leader. And therefore, I find that the rest of the team, which might be more appreciative of directness and transparency and honesty, will deal with them. And now, it's never 100% perfect in any workplace, but that's been my experience.
Tell us about your role as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Ontario Royal Museum.
That was an amazing position. I was the president of a private board. The ROM has the public and the private, which again was like a business. We raised our expenses through fundraising as well. So for every $1 million donated, 10% of that went to the office, and then the 90% went to the museum, which was a very effective and efficient business model. My board was filled with the most successful businessmen and women in the country. A majority of them came from different countries and became Canadian citizens, were great role models for immigrants in Canada, great role models for young people, great role models for everyone. We had a major campaign that was done before I got there, and more than half of the $300 million raised in total was from the board itself. So you had a great deal of commitment. And I think the one thing I learned or observed were that these very successful people treat every responsibility as if it's their business. So they had the energy and the commitment to the Royal Ontario Museum as if it was their company that they built from the ground up. And when I analyzed it, I thought, yes, because it's about reputation. It's about success, it's about pride, and they had the same style in whatever task was given to them. And I thought, that's the classy way of living. Just really give it your all, and it's better to do 2 or 3 things right than to have your name on 10 different organizations and not show up.
Was it a big board?
It was quite a big board. It had about 30 people. I would say about 20 came to the 4 meetings per year, and but more importantly, all of them were engaged in some way. So even if they couldn't make the meetings, I mean, these are very busy people, they would make phone calls for fundraising, they would buy tables for very elegant dinners, they would connect me even by email through their contacts for fundraising. They were all committed in their way.
So you raised, what, over $300 million?
That was in total.
In total.
In the 4 years that I was there, we raised $50 million. And I think where I did contribute was in the increase in operating from the provincial government. We went from 18 million to 27 million a year. We had a great lobbying campaign by the governors. I had to wait a year because I was a minister, and you can't lobby when a year out from provincial. And in fact, I wouldn't even call what I did lobbying, as I basically told the Board of Governors my advice on how to approach the government in a different way than they were doing, and they were successful.
So what was the physical changes to the museum that took place with the raising of that money? What were the physical changes?
Well, it expanded enormously. It doubled in square footage. The monies that I brought in, or my team, I had a great team of 27 people, brought in, basically was to pay off some of the debt, but also the late Raymond Chang, whose school I now work at, gave me many millions of dollars to make the ROM accessible to people with disabilities. And I felt that I had come full circle at that point, that I not only was the minister of the AODA, but that I was able, after leaving politics, to actually improve upon it. So we went over and above the AODA, and the minister at the time responsible for the AODA phoned Mr. Chang and thanked him because, of course, he made that gift anonymously at the time. It was months later that he allowed me to brag about him. That's the kind of man he was.
Yes.
And again, fundraising takes negotiation. I went in with one proposal to Mr. Chang to name a part of the building after him, and he said, that doesn't interest me. He says, give me something that helps people. So, as you know, in negotiation, always have a backup plan, always have another proposal, another option. And I did. This was always on my mind.
By the way, were you somewhat startled that he had said no to your proposal?
No, because in fundraising, you're rejected a lot of the time.
So you were used to the rejection.
Absolutely. In fact, I believe the statistics is 1 out of every 4 proposals gets accepted in fundraising, and this was at the height of the recession, 2007, 2008, and therefore the rejection rate was higher. So I was always ready to be rejected, but I always have another plan. And in fact, that happened a number of times during my years at the ROM. I would go in with plan A, but always have plan B. The Slate Family Foundation was another one. I went in naming the building, and Mr. Slate at the time, Gary Slate, said, that doesn't interest me. His family had just started a children's arts foundation to enhance the arts in children. And I said, well, we have a bursary fund that gives monies to children who can't afford to come to the ROM. He says, now you're talking. So again, always be ready with another proposal. Always know that what your interests are may not be what the interests of the client is, or the donor in this case, the constituent. And there has to be some sort of compromise.
Now, you're a very seasoned professional, particularly in relationships with the media. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What was your approach in handling the media, whether it be at the Chang School, whether it be as a minister, whether it be at the school board or at the Ontario Museum? What was your DNA, if you will, in terms of dealing with the media? And the second question, what would you, in reflecting, what would you advise people in terms of how best to deal with the media? Because it's with us now.
Oh, definitely. And we have citizen reporters everywhere, tweeting, Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, we're pretty well on all the time. I think if reflecting back and what I do presently, 2 things: know your stuff, know your facts, do your homework. In other words, if you're going to be interviewed on a topic, do your research, particularly if it's a new topic. Second, try and personalize it. So in politics, if I had a constituent that embodied what I was talking about in trying to get something through, even through my own government, or in opposition, particularly in opposition, have a personal story. The ROM, the same. When we did, in fact, announce the accessibility measures for the ROM, we had people with disabilities come and be part of the event so that the media could see straightforward how our changes affected people. The same at the Chang School. When I speak to media, there's always students that they can also speak to, or other colleagues that they can also speak to. And be accessible. I'm always accessible to the media. People that avoid the media, particularly with a controversial topic, are making a mistake.
Why do you say that?
I think that the media in a democracy is very important. I think it's important, even if you don't like what they say, it has to be said. If they disagree with you, it still has to be said. And by speaking with them, you at least have the opportunity to give your side, your opinion, and a good journalist will post that. A good journalist may post it make it 1% of the column or article, but they will post it. A good journalist will do that. And that's your only opportunity. Rebuttals are secondary, in my opinion. You have to be there from the very beginning. I also think you have a responsibility in a democracy. If someone wants to know something and you have that knowledge, you should share it.
Now we're coming to the end of our discussion here. Just a couple of questions. From your perspective, any person that you've come across that you would deem a superb negotiator, and if so, what sort of qualities would he or she have in terms of being the good negotiator?
Well, you won't be surprised at this. I think in my times in politics, I think one of the best negotiators that I've ever met was Sheldon Levy, our outgoing president. I think he had each and every one of us in his office when we were ministers, and telling us the needs of not only his university, but universities in general. And therefore, by making it about the bigger picture, by making it about society, all the universities, and then also about Ryerson University, I think he was very successful in establishing a very trustworthy relationship with the Ontario government and with anyone he comes across. Sheldon's a straight shooter and a good communicator and a down-to-earth person. And I
he's certainly all of those.
He's certainly all of those, and we will miss him.
And he's got a great sense of humor.
He's fabulous.
My final question. Having all those experiences and still being very young, what would you advise a young person, second or third year here at Ryerson, or any other university in terms of the career that they want to develop, the kind of job, the place they want to live? What would you advise those young people? Okay,
and I give talks like this all the time with young people, or they come and they see me in my office and we talk, and it's one of the pleasures of being at a university. Young people keep you young. Whether you look it or not, it doesn't matter. They keep you young at heart. One of the things I tell them is don't be afraid of the labor market. It is tough right now. Study what you love, but look at the labor market in terms of what skills you need to attach to your degree. So if you are getting a degree in the liberal arts, that's wonderful. Don't let the fact that the data shows that the jobs are in engineering scare you. If you love the liberal arts, study the liberal arts. But get a certificate or a course series or something, either during your degree studies or afterwards, right afterwards, in a job skill, so that is needed in the labor market. Like right now, big data is the big thing. Data scientists are few and far between, and we actually have a data analytics certificate that we just launched, so a little free advertising here. Study what you love, but also look at the labor market and the skills. The second is, you may not have, unless you're a teacher or a nurse, you may not have the same job even 5 years from now, never mind 30 years from now. Don't let that scare you. It's actually exciting to change careers every few years.
We know about that.
We know about that. So don't let that scare you. It means society has to catch up. I get very angry when I see young people can't get a lease because they don't have a job that's beyond 6 months. So I think society has to catch up to the fact that that's the way it is. And mortgage companies have to catch up to that fact that we are going to be changing jobs now, and young people more than even our generation. And we have to catch up with that fact. We haven't in Canada yet. And if anyone can do it, it's this generation. The other thing that I tell them is that I admire this generation. I mean, they're loyal. They're principled, they're honest, They're casual, and they're plugged in, and they communicate very well. And so I admire that about them, but I also tell them that the business world requires certain skills that they have to learn. The soft skills, how to write a good letter, how to greet people appropriately, what to do after a meeting, how to dress appropriately in the workplace. Those are skills that haven't changed that much. The needs for them haven't changed that much over the generations, and they should respect that as well. And in general, I tell them to enjoy life. If they do plan on having a partner for their life, that is the most important decision they're going to make for their career. If they want to have a big career, a big life, make sure they have a partner that will support that. I often get asked, what is the biggest piece of advice you can give us for our career? And that's the advice I give. Choose your partner well.
That's a pretty powerful message to give to young people, and I just want to say to you on behalf of the faculty and students at the Ted Rogers School of Management and the producers here of the Ryerson Negotiation Project, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your insights, and thank you for the contributions that you're making to Ryerson, to our province, and to our country. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you very much.
Likewise, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.